and why, with our partner in Brazil, we are producing ethanol, a biofuel made from renewable sugarcane to fuel cars. Let's broaden the world's energy mix. Let's go.
The world right now with hala-gorani, live from London, tonight on CNN.
Welcome to the program. Prime Minister Renzi, Secretary General Rassa Mashal, President Barzani, and Son Chan. Prime Minister, welcome back to the program.
Thank you.
Are you going to offer anything big, dramatic, radical to the Sunnis? This is an insurgent war. Surely it needs special forces on the ground to be able to identify future targets.
There won't be American special forces on the ground.
Turkey, under certain circumstances, is prepared to put boots on the ground in Syria.
If others do their own part.
Qatar has over the years been criticized of throwing money at a lot of these groups.
There's differences between some countries of who are the terrorists and who are the Islamist schools, but we don't consider them as terrorists.
Are you joining in the alliance? Are you also combating ISIS? You still have huge dreams. They didn't take that away from you.
They only can shoot a body. They cannot shoot my dreams.
Amanpour, tonight on CNN.
I'm Andrew Stevens in Hong Kong, and this is CNN.
Hello and welcome to our viewers in the United States and all around the world. I'm Rosemary Church. Ahead this hour, a heated political battle in the US over what to do with healthcare workers returning from Africa's Ebola hot zones. A nurse tells CNN her basic human rights have been violated. More grief and heartbreak in the US state of Washington. The shooting at a high school claims another victim. And Brazil's president ekes out a win for a second term, but that may have been the easy part. Well, the debate over Ebola policy in the US is intensifying. The governors of New York and New Jersey have a new policy, a mandatory quarantine for health workers returning from West Africa. It comes after a New York doctor tested positive for Ebola. He had been treating patients in Guinea. The White House is against mandatory quarantines. New York's governor softened his stance a bit Sunday, allowing workers to be quarantined at home in certain cases.
We're staying one step ahead. We're doing everything possible. Some people will say we're being too cautious. I'll take that criticism because that's better than the alternative.
Erin McPike reports the White House has made its concerns clear to the states involved.
We have heard from administration officials all weekend who are criticizing New York, New Jersey, and those other states for imposing these quarantining rules for healthcare workers who are returning from West Africa. That's including U.S. Ambassador to the UN, Samantha Power, who is in West Africa this week, as well as Dr. Anthony Fauci, who was on CNN State of the Union yesterday.
You don't want to make a blanket change in something that might have negative consequences. You want to continue to make the safety of the American public paramount, but it is critically important that you do that based on scientific evidence and data, and it tells us who can transmit and who can't.
And we also heard from the White House late Sunday. We got a statement from a senior administration official. I want to read part of that statement to you. The official says, quote, "We have let the governors of New York, New Jersey, and other states know that we have concerns with the unintended consequences of policies not grounded in science may have on efforts to combat Ebola at its source in West Africa." That official says they've also let the states know that they are working on new guidelines for healthcare workers returning from that region.
Erin McPike reporting there. One nurse condemns the policy after returning from treating Ebola patients in Sierra Leone. Casey Hickox was put into isolation at a New Jersey hospital. She tells Candy Crowley she has no information on what's going to happen next.
Well, I heard from my mother last night, who called me concerned and said, Governor Christie just said in an interview that you were, quote unquote, obviously ill. And this is so frustrating to me. First of all, I don't think he's a doctor. And secondly, he's never laid eyes on me. And thirdly, I have been asymptomatic since I've been here. I feel physically completely strong and emotionally completely exhausted. But for him to say I'm obviously ill, which is even a strange statement, what does that mean? Someone define that for me, because I think I don't quite understand what obviously ill means. But I am here to tell you that I am completely fine physically, and being held here is just, I just don't understand.
And what is your understanding about how long you will? What have they told you about tomorrow and the day after that and the day after that?
This is the other concern that I have. I have not been communicated a clear plan. My quarantine order was written by the New Jersey Health Commissioner, and even to this day, no one has told me what it means or what's the plan. No one has told me how long it will last. I don't know if I'm going to be retested, and if so, why I would be retested. I'm completely asymptomatic, and the test is not even accurate if you don't have symptoms. And yesterday, I spoke with the Assistant Health Commissioner, Christopher, I believe is his name, and I told him one thing. I said, the only thing I have to say to you is I want an answer for what is my clear plan. No one has communicated with me. You have, put me in a isolation unit without communicating medically or public health, scientifically logical chain of events that need to happen next. And this, to me, is just completely unacceptable.
And later this hour, we will hear more from this nurse about her living conditions in isolation. Well, meantime, an 18-year-old who was in isolation in an Australian hospital has tested negative for Ebola. She arrived in Australia from Guinea almost 2 weeks ago. She'd been under home quarantine until she developed a temperature and was put in isolation. Results of a second Ebola test are expected Wednesday. Well, America's ambassador to the UN is now in Guinea. It's Samantha Power's first stop on a tour of the countries hardest hit by Ebola as she assesses the global response to the virus.
Together, we can beat this epidemic. We have beaten every Ebola epidemic in history, and we will do so if we dramatically increase our involvement and our engagement.
The World Health Organization counts more than 10,000 confirmed or suspected cases of Ebola in West Africa. More than 4,900 have been fatal. It's feared the real numbers could be much higher. The vast majority of those cases and deaths are in Liberia, Sierra Leone and Guinea. One of the 4 US high school students wounded during a lunchtime shooting on Friday has died. 14-year-old Gia Soriano died in a hospital in the state of Washington late Sunday. Her family says they plan to donate her organs. 3 other teenagers are still in intensive care at local hospitals. Police have not given a motive for Jalen Freiberg shooting the students, including his cousins, before killing himself. Zoe Calasso died from her injuries not long after the shooting. Her friends told CNN how saddened they are to be without her.
I just want to know that Zoe was an amazing person and she's going to be missed. And I don't know, I just can't imagine how we're going to live without her. And she was so beautiful, and she was just so funny and amazing, and we all loved her so much.
I don't have any anger towards him. I just don't know what happened. It just doesn't make any sense. None of this makes sense. They were all very good friends. They were great friends. There's no explanation. Like he snapped for whatever reason, and it just doesn't make any sense. That's what makes it so hard.
It is so shocking, and students at the school say one of their faculty members, Megan Silberberger, is a hero. They say the first-year teacher ran toward Freiberg and stopped his rampage. Dan Simon has more on what Silberberger did that may have saved lives.
Very harrowing account. I spoke to the leader of the local education association. He tells me that the teacher was in a nearby office near the cafeteria, heard the shots, ran into the cafeteria, saw some students down, was wondering what was going on, and then actually confronted the shooter in some fashion. According to witnesses, the teacher put her hand on the shooter's arm, and then moments later, the shooter took his own life. At this point, the teacher not really wanting to say anything, and you can imagine why that would be the case.
The school will be closed all this week while the students and community mourn. Mental health counsellors have also been made available. Well, coming up next, a South African football star shot dead. Police say the suspects are on the run. We have more details on this shocking killing. Plus, outrage in the West Bank over a teenager's death. Coming up next, details on what happened and what Palestinians and Israelis are saying about it.
African Startup, in association with First Bank.
Think Food Industries is based in the Ugandan capital, Kampala. It manufactures food products made of cocoa, harvested on land inherited by Simbuya.
This plantation was first planted by my grandfather, and now I'm managing it together with my friend.
We have been friends with my partner quite long, from high school.
And today we're able to do chocolate, cocoa powder, cocoa butter.
A lot of cocoa is being exported, and most is going to Europe and Asia. You can imagine all the cocoa that is being produced in Uganda is going out.
Simbuya and Okuya launched their product line in May of 2014.
We are branding our chocolate Uganda. The world out there will know that there is cocoa and chocolate coming from Uganda.
Precision, grace, power. Every month, join us for a look at how things all around us move.
This month, improving speed and performance in transport.
0.3 seconds is the difference between coming out first and coming out fifth.
The Art of Movement, Thursday on CNN, in association with Amiga.
Well, shocking news out of South Africa today. Senzo Meyiwa, the 27-year-old captain and goalkeeper of the South African national football team, has been shot and killed. Police say he was in a house with 7 other people when it happened. 3 of the suspects fled. The Orlando Pirates Football Club issued a statement confirming what they call the untimely death of our #1 goalkeeper. The club also says they will hold a news conference Monday morning. Well, for more on this, I want to bring in sports journalist Graham Joffe. He joins me on the phone from Johannesburg. Graham, thanks for talking with us about this. The nation is, of course, in shock at the tragic loss of Senzo Meyiwa. What are authorities saying about the circumstances surrounding his death?
Rosemary, it seems to be, from what I've been reading so far and having seen some of the quotes from the police commissioners, it seems to have been an attempted house robbery that's gone all wrong. We hear about it so often in South Africa these days. We don't have to go too far back to the whole Oscar Pistorius trial when that was to be an alleged intruder. It's just so sad, and we just don't know how much more we can digest as a nation. We're talking about, we had a former track star, Mbulani Mulatsi, died in a car accident on Friday. We've had the Oscar trial, and now this just horrific news that greets South Africa on a Monday morning.
It is just horrific indeed. And at only 27 years of age, what is this young man's legacy, and how will his team cope with his sudden death?
I doubt any of the players could be coping very well at all. He was such a well-respected guy, a fantastic goalkeeper, a leader. He had just recently become the Bafana captain. And he's just, when you look at the quotes from the Pirates players, from the Bafana players, and from former players worldwide and players worldwide, they had the utmost respect for just a fantastic player and a good guy. And it's a senseless murder, another senseless murder in South Africa.
Yeah, and Graham, police are saying they will bring his killers to justice. And are even offering a reward at this time. How likely is it that they will track down his killers?
Yeah, Rosemary, I think, when it comes to these high-profile cases, it seems like the police are a lot stronger and a lot, more determined to catch the killers. You know, a reward at the end of the day is not justice. At the end of the day, a life has been lost, a family has now been destroyed by this tragic circumstances. And I go back to 2 years ago, and a good friend of mine and former heavyweight boxing champion, Corey Sanders, murdered just over 2 years ago. And it upsets, it just upsets the whole society, and it really is. It's just an absolute tragedy.
And how is the nation digesting this?
Not very well. As I said, we've had so much in the last couple of weeks. The crime in South Africa is rampant. There's no question about that. We get these police figures sometimes that we just wonder if the crime figures are ever right. A lot of people in the country are stopping to even report crime because they believe that nothing's really being done about it. And I just hope, it's a horrible thing to happen, but I just hope that something like this will just bring the government and to realize that the crime is destroying this country. Crime and corruption is destroying South Africa.
Sports journalist Graham Joffe, thanks so much for joining us. Well, Palestinians in the West Bank are angry after the Israeli military killed a teenager it says was posing a threat. The young man, who has already been laid to rest, was in the West Bank from the United States to learn about his heritage. Erin McLaughlin has more.
These are the last moments of 15-year-old Orwa Hamad. On the edge of his village in the West Bank, Israeli soldiers shot the Palestinian American dead.
A real bullet. Not a rubber bullet or a tear gas, a bullet from his head came to his neck, come out from his head.
People here say that clashes like this occur on a weekly basis, and local authorities and family members tell me that it was around here that Orwa Hamad was throwing stones at Israeli soldiers, and at some point the soldiers opened fire. But the Israeli military tells a different story.
The military declined CNN's interview request, but issued a statement saying the Israeli soldiers had prevented an attack. It reads, a Palestinian man was identified hurling a Molotov cocktail on Road 60. The soldiers immediately responded and eliminated the threat by firing at the perpetrator and confirming a hit. The incident is under review. The U.S. State Department also released a statement calling for a speedy and transparent investigation. Orwa's family says he came to the West Bank to learn about his religion and his culture. He was staying in Silwat, a Palestinian village wedged between an Israeli military base and an Israeli settlement. Human rights activists say the frustrations of people here are felt throughout the West Bank.
Palestinians are in the street protesting this continued occupation and all of its variables that impact them on a daily basis. And so when they are out to express this frustration, they are constantly met with force, excessive force.
In the past 6 months, Al-Haq counts at least 10 Palestinian miners killed in clashes with Israeli forces. The youngest was 11 years old.
This young man, the whole town, the whole neighborhood, the whole area, the whole state is with him because he's an innocent young child.
The death of Orwa Hamad, another bloody footnote to a conflict that seemingly has no end. Erin McLaughlin, CNN, Silwad, West Bank.
At least 30 boys and girls have been kidnapped by Boko Haram in northeast Nigeria. Local leaders say the abductions happened over the weekend when gunmen stormed the town of Mafa in Borno State. They believe the children will be used as foot soldiers. Hope is now fading for the release of the 219 schoolgirls taken back in April. Their release was anticipated after Nigerian authorities declared a ceasefire with the militant group earlier this month. We turn to weather now, and a tropical cyclone in the Arabian Sea may make a very rare landfall in the days ahead. We turn to our meteorologist, Ivan Cabrera, who joins us with more on this very unusual occurrence. What's behind it?
Yeah, they don't form here too often because a couple of reasons. We have a very small window for that to happen at the beginning or before the monsoon onto the southwestern monsoon and right after that. So we are now post-monsoon here, and this is the time when we can get them developing here. But they usually don't develop in the Arabian Sea. We have more activity actually further east in the Bay of Bengal. But this is Tropical Cyclone Nilufar with winds of 120 kilometers per hour. So if you're more familiar with the western Pacific basin, this would be the equivalent of a typhoon. Or in the Atlantic basin or eastern Pacific, it would be called a hurricane. But it's the same tropical feature here, an intense area of low pressure that continues to organize here, moving north-northwesterly at 7 kilometers per hour right now. So Arabian Peninsula, there's Oman. It is headed towards Oman, and I think it will get close enough to Oman so that we'll get some peripheral effects with some gusty winds and perhaps some rainfall here. And then it will screech to a halt and head off to the north and east and curve out. And then it'll be impacting with Pakistan and India. But again, there you see the core, this is a 48-hour forecast. The core dangerous winds here should remain offshore. That's Masira Island right there, probably getting the worst of it as far as some very gusty winds in the next 24 to 48 hours. So the system actually has a pretty good potential here to peak in intensity, perhaps between category 2 and 3. By the time we get into 48 hours, but that will happen over water. And so once it begins to make a turn towards Pakistan and India, it will begin to weaken as far as its wind field here. So that is certainly very excellent news, although there will be some nasty swells coming out of this thing once it does peak. But as it approaches in about 96 hours time, the border between Pakistan and India, we will likely be dealing with the equivalent of a tropical storm here. So that is what we're talking about here. And in fact, if the center of circulation makes landfall right over Pakistan, that is a rare event, and it would only be the 10th storm since back in 1895. Now, we've had stronger storms that have hit Pakistan. Back in 99, we had a Category 3 that killed upwards of 6,000 people. So this is going to be nothing like that. This is a much weaker system. It is mainly going to be a rain event across this region. We'll keep you posted if that changes. But yeah, 2 storms only reach this intensity in the entire basin throughout the year. So this is a unique event indeed.
Yeah, we seem to talk more and more these days about these rare weather events, don't we?
Yes, we do.
All right, we'll check in with you very soon. Thanks so much, Ivan. Well, it took 2 rounds of voting, but Brazil has finally elected its president. The results of a race that came down to the wire. That's next.
My voice, my story, my life.
In South Africa.
In Kenya. South Sudan.
Hear Africa's voices.
A way of understanding the world.
A door to the soul.
In Africa. In Africa.
In Africa.
CNN African Voices.
Hi, my name is Amos Wekesa, tourism entrepreneur from Uganda. Hear my story.
African Voices. Today on CNN, in association with Glow.
With CNN's On the Road, you've explored some of the world's most incredible places.
Don't you know that I won't stop till I take you to the top of the
world? Where will we go next?
This month on CNN Go, feast on the flavors of Japan, from tempura to ramen. We're on a culinary journey through a country famed for its food. Take a bite. Go into the kitchen with the nation's masters, beyond what any guidebook will show you. CNN Go, Saturday on CNN, in association with Korean Air.
A raucous crowd of supporters cheering on the newly re-elected president of Brazil. Incumbent Dilma Rousseff was victorious in Sunday's runoff vote over challenger Aécio Neves. President Rousseff took to Twitter to thank everyone who cast a vote for her. Neves spoke to Rousseff on the phone and congratulated her on her win. But it certainly wasn't an overwhelming victory. CNN Shasta Darlington has more on the closest election Brazil has seen in years.
After a heated, often unpredictable, and sometimes downright ugly campaign, Brazil has picked its next president. Dilma Rousseff of the leftist Workers' Party won re-election against centrist Aécio Neves. Rousseff got 52% of the vote, compared with Neves' 48% of the vote, really just a few million votes separating the two candidates. Now, Dilma Rousseff gave her victory speech in Brasilia, striking a relatively conciliatory tone. She called for unity, dialogue, and said that she would be a better president in the second term. Now, the main topic during this election was definitely the economy, and it really divided the country into two camps.
I'm thinking about the social programs that started with the Lula government and continued, and in some cases were expanded.
On the one hand, we had Dilma Rousseff really focusing on the social programs and the subsidies that have been implemented over the last 12 years that the Workers' Party has been in office, lifting millions out of poverty and into the working class. And on the other hand, we heard from Aécio Neves constantly talking about the macroeconomy and how he'd get the economy growing again after a recession in the first half of the year and a spike in inflation. Neves also benefited from a kind of last-minute investigation into a bribery scandal at the state oil company Petrobras, allegedly involving members of Rousseff's Workers' Party.
All I think about is corruption. It's gotten terrible.
Now comes the hard work for Dilma Rousseff. She's going to have to focus on building the economy back up, reining in inflation, also building up investor confidence without letting go of those social programs that are widely expected of her. All of this will have to be done in a Brazil left divided by attack ads, allegations of corruption, and the tightest election in decades. Shasta Darlington, CNN, Sao Paulo.
We turn to Ukraine now, and President Petro Poroshenko says he believes most voters in Sunday's parliamentary elections support what he calls Ukraine's path to Europe. Votes are still being counted, but Poroshenko believes he'll have majority support for his peace plan. But the results could cause further tensions with Russia. There was no voting in parts of Ukraine currently held by pro-Russian rebels. Well, voters also headed to the polls in Tunisia as the country takes a big step toward democracy. Soldiers were seen at polling stations in the capital as Tunisians lined up to cast their votes for a new parliament. The elections come almost 4 years after Tunisians ousted autocratic leader Zain El Abidine Ben Ali. Tunisia was the first of the so-called Arab Spring uprisings and is widely considered the most successful in its aftermath. Well, for a grim example of an uprising gone wrong, you only have to look to Tunisia's next-door neighbour, Libya. For all his faults, Muammar Gaddafi did a better job of holding the country together than anybody since. His cousin and close aide tells CNN it's time to end the deadly violence that has defined Libya for 3 years and get the nation back on track. CNN's Becky Anderson reports.
If the Arab Spring has taught us anything, it's that the removal of leaders who rule with an iron fist must be backed up by viable alternatives. The power vacuum left behind by the fall of Muammar Gaddafi in Libya has proven particularly messy for a country supposedly destined for democracy. It's also proven a tricky time for Gaddafi's closest aides, including his cousin, Ahmed Gaddafi al-Dam. Not surprisingly, he says the 2011 revolution that led to the leader's killing could have been dealt with much better.
Where is the protection of civilians now? Libya has been dragged to hell, being destructed, and its people are displaced. Fighting is daily and 1/10 of Libyans are falling. NATO countries have withdrawn their ambassadors and companies, left Libya drifting through the wind.
Just as international intervention played a major role in the outcome of the revolution, US officials say external forces are at work in Libya once again, trying to ensure that the current power struggle between moderate, extremist and nationalist factions ends the way they want it to.
Libya is of great concern to many people for different reasons, because of its location, because of its wealth, because of the great vacuum that is there, because of its geographic features, which is a large, porous society that is absent any kind of institutional security right now. So it's not surprising that its neighbors and its near neighbors and its further neighbors have concerns.
Some, like the US ambassador, feel that this perceived interference will delay any democratic transition. Others, such as the Libyan ambassador to the UAE, believe so-called political Islam must be defeated at all costs.
We are facing a monster, really, a mutation of Islam that purports to be Islam, that is not Islam. A monster that is closer to fascist ideas and totalitarian ideas, and that has nothing to do with the peace and compassion of our religion.
One thing seems certain. Any solution to Libya's bloody crisis may need to involve words as well as weapons. And it's a conversation that Ahmed Gadaf al-Dam wants to be part of.
Certainly not all Libyans will welcome dialogue. If we assume that there are 50,000 from both sides fighting right now, nonetheless, 6 million Libyans will support my proposal and are ready for dialogue. The international community has a responsibility to act and to contribute towards this dialogue, supervise it, and confront powers who do not want stability in Libya. Now we have a parliament elected by Libyans. Though we weren't part of that, we accept it in order to preserve Libya, its security and future.
What, if any, role the international community will have in instigating and overseeing dialogue isn't apparent. But Western leaders will want the world to see that they've learned from the mistakes of the last intervention. Becky Anderson, CNN, Abu Dhabi.
We'll take a short break now, but just ahead, a nurse went to West Africa to help Ebola patients. Now, Casey Hicks-Ox is in an isolation tent, even though she says she's not sick. She'll describe her conditions for us. That's coming up.
On the next Inside Africa.
People from all over the world come here to the Zambia-Zimbabwe border. It's one of the most remarkable sights on earth. And now, there's a new attraction in town.
New Age art with tribal roots. And the first ever National Art Gallery in Zambia. On the next Inside Africa. Tuesday, only on CNN. In association with Zenith Bank.
The most amazing places I've been to in the Middle East aren't those you can walk or drive to. They are in the eyes of the first Arab woman fighter pilot breaking down barriers at supersonic speed, in the smile of a young UAE student determined to shed stereotypes and make her way in the world. These are places you'll find hope, joy, and inspiration.
World politics, today's issues, and all the breaking news. Wolf, weekdays only on CNN.
Welcome to the program. Prime Minister Renzi, Secretary General Rassa Mashal, President Barzani, and Son Chan. Prime Minister, welcome back to the program.
Thank you.
Are you going to offer anything big, dramatic, radical to the Sunnis? This is an insurgent war. Surely it needs special forces on the ground to be able to identify future targets.
There won't be American special forces on the ground.
Turkey, under certain circumstances, is prepared to put boots on the ground in Syria.
If others do their own part.
Qatar has over the years been criticized of throwing money at a lot of these groups.
There's differences between some countries of who are the terrorists and who are the Islamist groups, but we don't consider them as terrorists.
Are you joining in the alliance? Are you also combating ISIS? You still have huge dreams. They didn't take that away from you.
They only can shoot a body. They cannot shoot my dreams.
Amanpour, tonight on CNN.
I'm Paula Hancock in Seoul, and this is CNN.
Welcome back to our viewers in the United States and all around the world. I'm Rosemary Church. Want to check the headlines for you this hour. Another teenager has died from Friday's shooting at a U.S. high school. 14-year-old Gia Soriano died late Sunday night from her injuries. Jail in Freiburg shot her and 4 others in their cafeteria. One of those teens died on Friday and Freiburg killed himself. The other victims are still fighting for their lives at local hospitals. Dilma Rousseff has won a second term as president of Brazil. She got more than 51% of the vote in Sunday's runoff election. Rousseff's opponent, Social Democrat Aécio Neves, conceded defeat and called Rousseff to congratulate her. Rousseff went on Twitter to thank her supporters. The captain of South Africa's national football team has been shot and killed. Senzo Meyiwa's club, the Orlando Pirates, confirmed the death of the 27-year-old goalkeeper. South African police say there was an altercation at a house where 7 people were present. They say 3 suspects fled. A news conference is expected later today. A nurse who is quarantined under New Jersey's Ebola policy is blasting what she calls a knee-jerk reaction by politicians. Casey Hickox was put into hospital isolation after returning from Sierra Leone, where she treated Ebola patients. She's tested negative for Ebola twice now. Well, in this second part of our interview with Casey Hickox, she tells Candy Crowley more about the conditions in her isolation tent. Take a listen.
Can you describe to me, like, where you are right now? What does it look like? What are you in the hospital in a room? Are you what's happening?
I am outside of the university hospital itself in a different building, I believe, although I can only say what I can see from my tent. I am in a tent within a building, and it's just a basic tent structure. There's a hospital bed, obviously, to bring me food. I have kind of a porta potty type restroom, no shower facilities, and no connection with the outside world except my iPhone, which I insisted that I brought with me when I arrived late Friday night.
So let me ask you this from a different point of view. You have been over in Sierra Leone. I think everyone would salute someone who really does put their life on the line to go over and help others. And we have heard over and over again while you have been away how vital it is for all countries to send workers, doctors, nurses, other healthcare workers to fight this disease where it is in order to, save those countries as well as protect the rest of the world. But understanding that the doctor who is now in quarantine in New York City was home 7 or 8 days before he spiked a bit of a fever and then was put into isolation. Do you understand the need of governors, be they from New Jersey or New York or Illinois, to say, we can't take this risk that somebody is out there with a fever or will spike a fever 8 or 9 days after they arrive? We need to make sure that they're in isolation till we know they are past the danger zone. Do you understand that psyche?
I completely don't understand it. It is completely not understandable to me. It is not based on any clear public health evidence, and it's not the recommendation of public health and medical experts at this point. I think we have to be very careful about letting politicians make medical and public health decisions.
And Hickox is taking legal action. Her attorney says he will file papers in court demanding a hearing in the next few days. The US-led coalition has launched more airstrikes against ISIS targets in Iraq and Syria over the weekend. In Kobani, plumes of smoke clouded the horizon after ISIS reportedly set houses and buildings on fire. There were also explosions to the south and clashes in the east of the Syrian city. A human rights group says more than 800 people have been confirmed dead in Kobani since ISIS began attacking there several weeks ago. But the group says the actual death toll is probably twice that many. Well, the 4 Western hostages recently beheaded by ISIS endured months of psychological and physical torture. That is according to the New York Times, which reports Americans James Foley and Stephen Sotloff and Britain's David Haynes and Alan Henning were all treated differently by 2 different groups of militants. It says one group would starve, beat and threaten them with execution, while another group would treat them more kindly by bringing them sweets and discussing their possible freedom. Well, Iraq says it dealt a blow to ISIS over the weekend by regaining control of an area near Baghdad. Iraqi soldiers and Shia militiamen were seen celebrating after retaking a mixed Sunni-Shiite area just south of the Iraqi capital. Well, international fears are growing over ISIS's ability to recruit Western jihadists abroad and inspire lone wolf terror attacks at home. One European country that's especially concerned is using a controversial method of terror prevention. Atika Schubert examines Denmark's so-called de-radicalization program.
There are an estimated 100 Danish fighters in Syria. That is a lot for a small country. Denmark has one of Europe's highest rates of jihadi fighters, and it faces a dilemma: what to do when these fighters come home. Omar, in his early 20s, recently returned from Syria. His parents thought he was helping at a refugee camp. He was fighting with a jihadist brigade. He spoke to us on condition of anonymity.
In reality, I have met a lot of Western people in Syria. Nobody has ever talked about getting back to plan to bomb these countries as they're trying to make it sound like in the media.
Omar is one of 16 known fighters to return. On arrival, he did a very un-radical thing. He contacted the Danish police program for returning fighters voluntarily. Were you nervous about coming back home to Denmark?
No, I wasn't that nervous because I knew that I didn't do any kind of a criminal act or something like that.
Here's how the program works. Any returning fighter is eligible for help getting a job, a house, an education, and psychological counseling, just like any other Danish citizen. But they must be screened by police. Anyone found to have committed a crime will be put through the courts and possibly prison. Their information is also passed to Danish intelligence.
This is not a gift shop. You have to be motivated. You have to really want to become a part of the Danish society. We help them find a way through the system. And what we've seen is that out of these 16 who have returned, 10 of them are now back in school, have a job. And it seems to us that their focus is on something else than in Syria.
Police here say it is a Danish solution that's not that special, simply a crime prevention program with a focus on jihadis. And it's voluntary. Omar is one of those who decided he didn't need the help, but he has friends who are in the program.
They don't help people by arresting them, by raiding their homes and taking away their passports and putting them into prison.
Importantly, the program does not try to change the fundamentalist beliefs of returning fighters, as long as they do not advocate violence.
They are still Muslim believers, some of them in perhaps a way that we would call radical, but not to an extent that, so as far as we can see, they are a threat to the society.
Omar believes the program is preventing attacks back home, but he also says he might return to Syria.
Young people have a lot of feelings. So, you know, if you're going to be humble towards those return fighters, they will be humble towards you. If you're going to be harsh towards them, they're going to be harsh towards you.
What advice do you have for somebody who wants to come back from Syria back home? What advice do you have?
Then I will tell him that he has nothing to fear if you want to come back.
So, does it work? It's too soon to know, but police say the alternative would be fighters that return and simply disappear. This program is designed to help while also keeping a close watch. Atika Schubert, CNN, Aarhus, Denmark.
So the big question here, how did a country like Denmark, listed as one of the world's happiest places to live, see such an unusual spike in jihadist fighters? Atika Schubert will examine that tomorrow. A short break now, but just ahead, it is the end of an era for British forces. We will show you how the UK formally ended its combat operations in Afghanistan.
Human to Hero, in association with Nikon. I am an Olympic swimmer from Japan. I swim 100 meter, 200 meter breaststroke. 日本人で初めてアテネと北京のオリンピックで4つの金メダルを取りました。アジアで勝負できる人間っていうのが、水泳ではあまり多く出てない状況の中で、水泳で勝負できるんだよ、世界と戦えるんだよっていうのを証明することができた。
To make someone smile, to create new value, to open the way to the future. People take on challenges to bring someone happiness. Nikon takes on challenges in the field of optics. Let's try together. Let's go see a new world.
When it comes to property, people say location is everything. But what if you want to develop an emerging market? How do you spot the next hot address? And what defines prime real estate? Every week on 1 Square Meter, join me as we go into the property business. We'll explore the latest building designs, talk to those driving growth, and find out where investors are moving in next.
1 Square Meter, Tuesdays in Connect the World, only on CNN, in association with MR.
My voice, my story,
my life. In South Africa.
In Kenya.
South Sudan.
Hear Africa's voices.
A way of understanding the world. A door to the soul. In Africa.
In Africa.
In Africa. CNN African Voices.
Hi, my name is Amos Wekesa, tourism entrepreneur from Uganda. Hear my story.
African Voices. Today on CNN, in association with Glow.
The United Kingdom has formally ended its combat mission in Afghanistan. ITV's John Irvine was there as Britain handed over control of its last base in Afghanistan.
So for takeoff, wind estimates 0905 knots. Goodbye from Bastion, safe flight.
A farewell to Helmand. A Hercules transport loaded with significance, for it was flying shortly after the Union flag stopped doing so here. This lowering amounted to the official end of Britain's Afghan war. 13 years since the campaign began, they called this the end of operations ceremony, and it fell to Brigadier Rob Thompson to receive his nation's colours. A poignant moment after a long war.
There is regret over every single serviceman who's lost their life in this country and all those who've been wounded, and we hold them in our hearts to the very end of our days. But what I can tell every single member of the armed forces who served here and every family who have sent their loved ones here is that we have made a difference.
The ceremony was at Camp Bastion, an iconic British base until today, when we and our partners, the Americans, gave it to the grateful Afghans.
Thank you, all the British soldiers, sailors, Marines, whoever they were in Helmand, what they did for the providing security and also training of the ANA.
At the height of the war, there were 40,000 international troops in Bastion. Now the barracks, the vast hangars and workshops are empty, and perhaps a little eerie. This is a place all our personnel who served in Helmand are familiar with. The British military haven't set up anything else on this scale since the Second World War, and they may never do so again.
To all intents and purposes, for the last 8 years, this vast place has been British territory. But now our mission here is over, and for us, Camp Bastion is redundant, a piece of British history.
Last month, a service took place here to honour the British fallen. The remembrance wall, on which all are named, is to be resurrected in Britain. The epitaph on it reads, "When you go home, tell them of us and say, for your tomorrow, we gave our today." There are few tomorrows left for the British here. The last of our equipment has just been airlifted out, and the rear guard of a few hundred soldiers will follow shortly.
Afghan defence officials welcomed the end of British military operations in the country. They say their forces are more than prepared to assume control of security.
We definitely welcome this act, which puts our capabilities into practice. Afghan security forces have been leading the fight in ground operations in the country for 2 years now.
453 British troops died in service during the Afghanistan war. The last remaining American combat troops in the country are scheduled to withdraw by the end of the year. Soldiers from both nations will stay on in Afghanistan on training missions. The news continues right after this short break. Do stay with us.
On the next Inside Africa.
People from all over the world come here to the Zambia-Zimbabwe border. It's one of the most remarkable sights on earth. And now, there's a new attraction in town.
New Age art with tribal roots. And the first ever National Art Gallery in Zambia. On the next Inside Africa. Tuesday, only on CNN. In association with Zenith Bank.
Welcome to the program. Prime Minister Renzi, Secretary General Rasa Mashal, President Barzani, and Son Chan. Prime Minister, welcome back to the program.
Thank you.
Are you going to offer anything big, dramatic, radical to the Sunnis? This is an insurgent war. Surely it needs special forces on the ground to be able to identify future targets.
There won't be American special forces on the ground.
Turkey, under certain circumstances, is prepared to put boots on the ground in Syria.
If others do their own part.
Qatar has over the years been criticized of throwing money at a lot of these groups.
There's differences between some countries of who are the terrorists and who are the Islamist groups, but we don't consider them as terrorists.
Are you joining in the alliance? Are you also combating ISIS? You still have huge dreams. They didn't take that away from you.
They only can shoot a body. They cannot shoot my dreams.
Amanpour, tonight on CNN.
Amazing places I've been to in the Middle East aren't those you can walk or drive to. They are in the eyes of the first Arab woman fighter pilot breaking down barriers at supersonic speed, in the smile of a young UAE student determined to shed stereotypes and make her way in the world. These are places you'll find hope, joy, and inspiration.
Hey, get a whiff of this. Second thoughts you may not want to. Scientists have learned that Comet 67 PCG has a pretty rancid smell. Europe's Rosetta orbiter has moved within 5 miles of the comet's surface, close enough to detect a pungent bouquet of aromas, much like rotten eggs, methanol, and even horse urine. Scientists say they will use the information to help understand how the solar system formed. Well, that takes us to our meteorologist, Ian Cabrera. What a mix of smells, huh? What do you think?
Well, having lived on a farm, I can tell you horse urine is something you want to stay away from.
You know all of those smells.
Not good at all. But how about that? They've got olfactory sensors in there. That's incredible stuff.
Yeah.
All right. Well, good to know. Stinky comets. Let's talk about the stormy pattern in Europe. If you're watching us through the weekend, we've been talking about this low that brought those incredible images out of Athens on Friday. Well, that low is now weakening and heading off to the Black Sea. But guess what? It will be replaced by a secondary low. So we're in between systems now. It's just more rain is going to be on the way. So this pattern that we've been in, the stormy pattern across southeastern Europe, will continue, and fine weather further north and west. But see, this one goes away, and then we've got this other development here south of Athens. So yes, you will get additional rainfall through the early part of the week, and it will be accumulating here. And because of the recent event we had, the potential for flooding is certainly going to be there as things are saturated on the ground. But look at this chunk of nice weather across Central Europe. Weather's going from west to east, but it's happening well to the north here across Ireland, into the UK, mainly Scotland, and then heading up into Scandinavia. Iberian Peninsula looks fantastic here. In fact, very warm. Madrid will be seeing temperatures climbing back into the mid-20s later on this afternoon. There's that rain up to the north, Glasgow getting in on some of the showers. Very cool temperatures to the east where we have this low here, but mild to the west. And so that high temperatures today will be very pleasant. Look at Paris at 18, 25 in Madrid, and then staying cold further east with single-digit highs from Russia heading down into parts of Romania and Bulgaria. Checking in on the United States, we've had a series of storm systems, a siege really across the northwest. We've had hurricane-force winds, torrential downpours. A lot of people without power in the last couple of days across Seattle into Portland as well because of the ferocious winds that have been coming in. That was the weekend system. We now have another one queued and ready to move in throughout today. Watch the clock here, Monday 16:30, so that by the afternoon from Vancouver, Seattle into Portland, we'll be getting in on some rainfall, the heaviest of which I think will fall across the Olympic National Park and then up towards Vancouver Island, where here, accumulations, it could be a lot, upwards of 100 millimeters or 4 inches, perhaps even up to 5 inches in the next couple of days because that flow continues Tuesday into Wednesday. Very wet and stormy time of it, no question about it here, as the snow, of course, continues to fall over the higher elevations. I want to show you what's been going on across the rest of the U.S. Very warm temperatures have made their way all the way from the Rockies here into the eastern United States, where temperatures have been above average. Look at Washington, D.C., almost November here at 80 degrees for today. Atlanta will be getting very warm, almost record highs through the day on Sunday, and then the pocket of cool air begins to move in from north and west. I want to leave you with some fantastic pictures from this volcano in Hawaii, Big Island here. That lava flow is now approaching Pahoa, so, well, officials have been warning residents that at a moment's notice they may have to evacuate as a result of this lava continuing to push further to the east. In fact, it rolled through a cemetery earlier yesterday, and now it's beginning to threaten homes there. Just amazing. Of course, Rosemary, we've been following this flow from the eruption back in the summer. So it has taken a while, but it is now approaching some areas where they may need to get out of the way.
Yeah, and people are packing up their things and getting out for the most part, aren't they? All right, thanks so much, Ivan. Appreciate it. Well, it was another weekend of American football in the UK. Thousands turned out at London's Wembley Stadium to see the Detroit Lions play the Atlanta Falcons. For viewers back in the States, it was a new way to kick off their Sunday. Jim Bolden has that.
The game here at Wembley Stadium between the Detroit Lions and the Atlanta Falcons is the 10th regular season NFL game to be held in London since 2007. But what makes this one different is that it will start at daylight and end in daylight in London, which means it's a morning game for the American audience. 9:30 in the morning on the East Coast, 6:30 on the morning on the West Coast. The idea is to have a breakfast game to see if Americans will watch it over their Wheaties. We asked a couple fans here if they thought Americans would want to watch NFL games on Sunday morning.
I feel sorry for the people back home because they had to get up really early, okay? And so they can't have their beer and their liquor right now to tailgate for this game. But I'm sure that they're up and they're rising up back in Georgia.
Bit too early for my liking, getting out of bed at that time, but no, still good. See how America takes to it.
Former NFL player Warwick Dunn has his doubts about future breakfast kickoffs.
I'm hesitant about, you're not used to waking up and watching football at 9 o'clock in the morning. Usually it's a little league, pee-wee football or so forth. But on Sundays, usually individuals get up and go to church and football in late afternoons.
As for the game itself, it was a thrilling end after the Falcons had gone up 21-0. The Lions kicked a last-second field goal to win and go 6-2.
Just happy to come out on top. It was a great team we just played.
How do you come back from such a bad first half?
We all believe in each other. We put a lot of hard work in the offseason, and you fight tooth and nail to win these games, and that's why you play all 4 quarters. We didn't look good on offense, defense, special teams, whatever it was in the first half, and we got it together going in the second half and came away with a win.
6-2, not a bad start, eh?
Yeah, absolutely. Makes this flight home a whole lot better.
I hope y'all enjoyed the show. You think there could be a franchise here?
I would love it.
A thrilling end to the 10th NFL regular season game here in London, the NFL will have to look at the ratings and the reaction for what was a breakfast bowl, a game that was played in the morning time in the U.S. Would the reaction be positive? Could the NFL do this more often? And could it mean that London comes ever closer to getting a permanent NFL franchise? Jim Bolden, CNN, Wembley Stadium.
We'll have to watch out for the reaction there. And you have been watching CNN's special coverage. My colleague Natalie Allen picks things up from here. And we will go live to Nigeria, where there have been more kidnappings by Boko Haram militants. I'm Rosemary Church. Thanks for being with us.
This month on CNN Go, feast on the flavors of Japan, from tempura to ramen. We're on a culinary journey through a country famed for its food. Take a bite. Go into the kitchen with the nation's masters, beyond what any guidebook will show you. CNN Go, Saturday on CNN, in association with Korean Air.
This is CNN.
What does it mean to go there? It doesn't mean reading about it. It means packing a bag and going there and talking to the people. Talking to activists in secret. Activists risking their lives for speaking to a Western journalist in Damascus. Talking to people on the margins of the story about how they're affected by the decisions of those much more powerful than them. That is why I go there, to get the story firsthand.
Precision, grace, power. Every month, join us for a look at how things all around us move.
This month, improving speed and performance in transport.
0.3 seconds is the difference between coming out first and coming out fifth.
The Art of Movement, Thursday on CNN, in association with Amiga.
I'm Anderson Cooper. This is CNN.
Hello and welcome to our viewers in the United States and around the world. I'm Natalie Allen. Coming up this hour, officials in New York and New Jersey defend their Ebola policies after a nurse returning from West Africa lashes out at a mandatory quarantine.
I feel like my basic human rights have been violated.
Also ahead here, Brazil's Dilma Rousseff wins re-election in a tight runoff. Also, British forces and the U.S. Marines end formal combat operations in Afghanistan. We'll see what they've left behind. And also, the secretive startup that has taken the web by storm with the help of this little tiny elephant. And we begin with the Ebola epidemic. U.S. health policy on Ebola is now the topic of growing political debate. Several states imposing their own mandatory quarantines on health workers returning from West Africa, and the White House opposes that. A nurse who has come under New Jersey's new mandatory quarantine is lashing out, calling the policy a knee-jerk reaction by politicians. Here's CNN's Mary Maloney.
I am completely healthy and with no symptoms.
Nurse Casey Hickox says the mandatory 21-day quarantine imposed on her by the state of New Jersey is inhumane. Hickox returned to the U.S. Friday after caring for patients with Ebola in Sierra Leone. Sunday, she criticized Governor Chris Christie's statement that she was obviously ill.
Well, I don't think he's a doctor, and secondly, he's never laid eyes on me. And thirdly, I have been asymptomatic since I've been here.
Hickox says her Ebola tests have come back negative twice. Governor Christie told Fox News Sunday he has no second thoughts.
It was my conclusion that we needed to do this to protect the public health of the people of New Jersey.
Dr.